All ever become a reality in America? Some fear any nuclear, biological, or chemical attack on U.S. territory might trigger just that. And as KSLA News 12's Jeff Farrell discovered, the clergy would help the government with potentially their biggest problem, us.
From my cold, dead hands.
Charlton Heston's famous declaration captures a truly American value, the overarching desire to protect our freedoms. But gun confiscation is exactly what happened during the state of emergency following Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans. U.S. troops also arrived, something far easier to do even now thanks to last year's elimination of the 1878 Posse Comitatus Act. That forbid U.S. troops from policing on American soil. If martial law were enacted here at home, like depicted in the movie The Siege, easing public fears and quelling dissent would be critical. And that's exactly what the Clergy Response Team, as it's called, helped accomplish in New Orleans.
Jeff, the primary thing that we say to anybody is let's cooperate and get this thing over with, and then we'll settle the differences once the crisis is over.
Such clergy response teams would walk a tightrope between the needs of the government versus the wishes of the public.
In a lot of cases, these clergy would already be known in the neighborhoods in which they're helping to defuse that situation.
For the clergy, one of the biggest tools that they will have in helping calm the public down or obey the law is the Bible itself, specifically Romans 13.
Because the government is established by the Lord, and that's what we believe in the Christian faith. That's what's stated in the Scripture.
Civil rights advocates believe the amount of public cooperation may depend largely on how long they expect a suspension of their rights might last. Jeff Farrell, KSLA News 12 reporting.
And according to Tuberville, during Hurricane Katrina, the clergy response team provided 38 chaplains a day around the clock at 8 different camps.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Oregon rise? Without objection.
Most Americans would agree that it would be prudent to have a plan to provide for the continuity of government and the rule of law in case of a devastating terrorist attack or natural disaster. A plan that provides for the cooperation, the coordination, and continued functioning of all three branches of the government. The Bush administration tells us they have such a plan. They introduced a little sketchy public version that's clearly inadequate and doesn't really tell us what they have in mind. But they said, don't worry, there's a detailed classified version. But now they've denied the entire Homeland Security Committee of the United States House of Representatives access to their so-called detailed plan to provide for continuity of government. They say, trust us. Trust us, the people who brought us Katrina, to be competent in face of a disaster. Trust us, the people who brought us warrantless wiretapping and other excesses eroding our civil liberties. Trust us. Maybe the plan just really doesn't exist, and that's why they won't show it to us. I don't know. Or maybe there's something there that's outrageous. The American people need their elected representatives to review this plan for the continuity of government.
Gentleman's time is...
Colonel North, in your work at the NSC, were you not assigned at one time to work on plans for the continuity of government in the event of a major disaster?
Mr. Chairman.
I believe that question touches upon a highly sensitive and classified area, so may I request that you not touch upon that, sir.
I was particularly concerned, Mr. Chairman, because I read in Miami papers and several others that there had been a plan developed by that same agency, a contingency plan in the event of emergency that would suspend the American Constitution. And I was deeply concerned about it and wondered if that was the area in which he had worked. I believe that it was, but I wanted to get his
May I most
confirmation.
respectfully request that that matter not be touched upon at this stage. If we wish to get into this, I'm certain arrangements can be made for an executive session.
And tragically, the only member who got close was Jack Brooks, and he was stopped by the chairman. But the truth of the matter is that, yes, you do have those standby provisions, and the plans are there, and the statutory emergency plans are there, whereby you could, in the name of stopping terrorism, apprehend invoke the military and arrest Americans and hold them in detention camps. In times of passion and in times of great fear, what to the eyes of the person and the mind of a person in time of relative peace and stability seem impossible become very real, very logical, very possible.
March of this year, I was invited to attend a meeting, a local meeting of the Emergency Management Agency. That we call it the local FEMA people. I was invited to come because I had done disaster relief work with another church denominational group years ago, and I wanted to see what was going on. They were planning for any kind of bioterrorism, they said, so I wanted to find out what it was, it being FEMA. That was wonderful stuff when they started out, but it immediately turned into this is for a natural disaster, a tornado, flood, or any act of bioterrorism, or a nationally declared emergency. And so I lit up to that one, and the spokesperson there was from the state FEMA office, who also was the trainer for pastors in their training program for pastors. He said, your job, pastors, is to get to your congregations and preach to them Romans 13. And that's the part that says you obey the higher powers. And he was saying you have to teach them to obey their governments.
By the way, Hitler did that. He had a cohort of preachers that preached Romans 13 out of context.
Yes, he did. And this is what he wanted us to do. And so he's telling us that. He's telling us, and the thing that really got us started on this, and when I started contacting people, is when he said the problem with local enforcement of a federal or state mandate that is quarantine or relocation, and these are the terms he used, or a declaration of martial law based on whatever disaster it might be.
He said martial law. Let's be clear.
Yes, he did. And he said if it goes the distance, the problem is all along the way is this so-called cowboy mentality, and you pastors are going to have to learn to quell that cowboy mentality. And so I asked him what he meant. He said, the individualistic effort that stands up and said, this is my property, you'll pry guns from my cold dead hand kind of thing. And everybody laughed. There were only about 6 people there. And he said, we're talking about law enforcement. That's a law enforcement issue. We're talking about you pastors going there because you know the people, you all are trusted, and you'll be preaching this ahead of time. You can stand in the neighborhoods and tell people this is for their own good. This is deadly real. And that was our first meeting. The second meeting pretty much carried it through with our responsibility as pastors is to have training. And this man, who is a Seventh-day Adventist pastor, he's also on a national organization for disaster relief. He's also working with DHS and FEMA. He's on their payroll. We just found this out last week. He said that your pastor's jobs are going to be to deal with the individuals, not just in counseling, but you're going to have to control some folks who may not be so cooperative. He said, but that's going to be a law enforcement issue. You'll be backed by that. And he said, besides, pastors aren't trained to handle everything. We get the picture that me and others who are aware of this, that we're going to be standing at some farmer's end of his lane while he's standing there with his double barrel wherever he's got, telling him to lay the arms down. They have to confiscate your cows, your chickens, your
and he's got to be relocated to a camp. Now, for those that don't know, right here in Austin, we've confirmed some of the biggest churches are now FEMA officers secret to church, and little do you know, this guy is an actual servant of the Antichrist beast system.
And this is what's so frightening. It started out, he made it sound like it was a local thing that we were doing, and we're the pioneers, we're the first one.
They always say that.
They always say that, and I knew it was coming. Just last week there was training for pastors, which we'll get into at some point. I haven't faxed you the training manual. The training manual pretty much keeps pastors down by telling us we cannot handle all these mental health issues.
Now, I know.
We were told then that we can't handle everything, so there'll be the professionals there helping us out. But we were told we would have to take mental health training. And to make it palatable to the other pastors, and these are their words now, that we won't call it mental health, we'll call it spiritual care. And so they've renamed everything. Instead of mental health and disaster relief, it's spiritual care.
Well, we're covering a national program of the Federal Emergency Management Agency to turn leading pastors, priests, rabbis, you name it, into secret police enforcers. Gun confiscation, martial law. Remember, in my film Road to Tyranny, I haven't asked the pastor if he's seen this. We have FEMA in Kansas City months before 9/11 saying the Founding Fathers are terrorists, all Christians are terrorists, and basically how we're the enemy and have to die. So this is bone-chilling. This is the martial law arm. That's always been FEMA's job since 1979. Now they're really beefing up to do it. Whenever they have urban warfare training drills for conditioning for martial law, which their own documents admit, they always tell the town, you're the first, you're special,
exactly.
As they told you, and then they tell you a few months in, oh, by the way, it's 13,000 counties.
Right. They mentioned that one of the reasons that they're really pushing pastors to get on board is that we can help recruit other people for Citizen Corps. And Citizen Corps will be the guys who are going around checking doors, kind of thing. And they said the benefit of being in Citizen Corps for pastors and also locals is this, that will put you on a higher list for antivirals or vaccination. In other words, if you volunteer, you get vaccinated and get your pills first, and so does your family. You don't volunteer, you don't get the drugs.
And more than that, you'll get the food shipments during an emergency if you've got the little I'm a Minion badge.
They talked about these centers, and they're not calling them relocation. 3 months ago, it was relocation quarantine centers, and now it's community aid centers. And these are going to be activated at the local schools, and they said this is where the Citizen Corps volunteers will be.
And that's why they're putting fences up around schools, making them mini prisons with cameras, doors that automatically lock down with wire mesh in the windows. These are prisons.
Right, and where we are, they have the roads circuited off that in the event of some kind of quarantine, some relocation, that they know what roads to siphon off. One of the more frightening things is that they're passing this off as for the common good. It's the typical garbage drivel that you heard all these years, but they're so bold about it. And now when they're bringing pastors in, there's so many pastors who are so desperate for church growth at any cost that they're jumping on the bandwagon here. They want their name out front in this. They want their church name out front.
Well, I want to add that when the economy implodes by design, many people will be forced to take jobs with a paltry payment. Instead of make-works like Roosevelt had building dams, the make-work is going to be little armed security guards.
Yes, the names of those pastors who signed up, made the pledge, so that would really help us out. But that's my advantage. But I think it'd be a great idea to put something together so people can confront their pastors. They should know already how they feel about it, but you know, sometimes these things sneak in on people. But these guys are signing up.
Pastor, I have friends who attend big Baptist churches in Austin, two big ones, and they, 3 years ago, one of them brought me a document, and it said, during the upcoming election, this was like in early 2004, this was about 2 years ago, do not talk about politics at lunch. Do not talk about politics with anyone in Sunday school or anywhere in the church. It is not proper. And then now they're being told that the preachers are getting up and saying, we must submit to the government. Bad things are coming. They know best. New Orleans was good. I mean, this is really going on.
Yeah, well, these people need to get out of those churches.
And the pastors led the Revolutionary War against the Redcoats. Now they're going to lead the destruction of America.
Well, I think the people have failed to know our history. Those in power know it all too well, and they know who to subvert, they know who to co-opt, and they go after the pastors. I mean, what better group of people to get in there and get them to change?
Under the faith-based initiative, $10 billion a year to start to pay off churches.
Oh, yeah.
How much are they promising money down the road during an emergency?
No, they haven't even mentioned anything like that. But I'll tell you now, there are several guys who are involved who are already getting money from the faith-based thing, and I mean as far as getting the outward money. That they've been turned on to grants by our government and said, look, this is where you can get your grants for this program.
Can we get into the loyalty oath required? I have an article here out of loyalty oath required of Illinois FEMA volunteers. They're now getting students, politicians, pastors. Can you get into the loyalty oath that you were given?
Same loyalty oath, and a lot of us rebelled against that one. A lot of us being those who just heard about it, didn't think it was a good idea. But what they've said is you don't have to make the pledge. All you got to do is make an affirmation. And everybody was happy. I'm not kidding. And the pledge, basically, if you've got a copy of it.
But that's what Hitler did. They just lined them up and said, raise your right hand.
Sure, just raise your right hand. You can say affirm. You can say pledge. You can say I agree. Anything you want to say that makes you happy. You know, because some Christians know they shouldn't be taking oaths where they go against the oath and call it something else. It's a pledge. It's an honoring of the oath.
It's all lawyer word games. Again, they call the Patriot Act the Patriot Act. They call drugging half the kids New Freedom. It's ridiculous.
Sure. Well, this loyalty oath basically says that while you're on duty with, under FEMA protection, that we get workers' comp through that. So if we're injured in disaster relief or someone shoots us because we're trying to get in their farm, that we're covered, and that we promise not to overthrow the government or actively participate while we're on the payroll, which is basically the payroll is workers' comp. Now, the problem with that, of course, you can see as far as I go, you're not supposed to be with any group that advocates the overthrow of the government while you're on that time. So pastors who go there, and if they happen to be like myself, but I'm not going to serve with them, but, you know, who happen to have some allegiances that would be contrary to what they see, that can be classified as a terrorist group, and Christians already are classified as terrorists.
Notice at first it's, hey, come on in, it's for hurricanes. Then, oh, it's for bird flu. And then by a month into it, oh, it's for people that want to fight us or overthrow us. It's what is the government planning that they know there's going to be mass physical revolts?
You know, it's like Y2K. You know, everybody was happy when nothing happened, but actually something did happen. The government got just what they wanted. Everybody's online, everybody's networked, everybody's being watched. Well, they're going to do the same thing with this if they don't take it the next step. They'll be happy with 70 to 80% of what they want now.
And get more into that, how who's knocking on doors, what's going on?
Yeah, well, what's happening is the neighbors complain against neighbors, and then they call the local sheriff, or they call the health department, or they call some other agency, and they're knocking on doors already, and people are already of the mindset accepting that kind of authority and that kind of law enforcement. So what I'm saying is, when it comes down to a real disaster, that's who they're going to turn to. They're already being told, don't handle things yourself, get rid of the neighborhood quality.
Well, this is all just drilling us for martial law.
Yes. Well, you know, I'm sure you're quite aware that they have a policy called, a program called peer-to-peer, and that was under FEMA, it was under DHS, Department of Homeland Security, and now it's been turned over to this national volunteer organization in disaster relief, where they train neighbors, or they train a family or a home in one neighborhood to pretty much oversee the neighborhood, and that's called peer-to-peer. And what they're doing is they're training more or less brown shirts to sit in a neighborhood. If something goes wrong, they're to go and talk to the neighbors. They're like the neighborhood watch groups.
Prima Kopp, the former head of the KGB, was hired by Homeland Security before it even got funding. At the same time, Marcus Wolf, the former head of the Stasi, was hired for consulting. This isn't a joke. This is really happening.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is happening, and it's not being hidden. It's not being hidden anymore. This makes the front page of our paper here. People can stop guns from coming to their front door, but the flu, they have a problem with that. They
well,
can't
Pastor, a lot of people call it the sixth sense. I call it discernment.
Yes, sir.
And this is the globalists play a trick, and I want to see if you can. You sound like a very intelligent man, probably smarter than I am. So you can. People deep down know something's wrong. They know we're in great danger. The government, psychological warfare experts, know that we know something's wrong, and the problem is them, the globalists. And so they put out these fake things, which deep down we know are fake, these fake crises, but we know something real is scary going on, and they misdirect our energies that are really aware of them into something else. So I think a lot of the fear is people know something's wrong, and it's the government, so the government misdirects it onto their neighbors and other people.
And that puts the government in charge. You're right. This is what the government does. This is the powers that be. They can't enforce their authority, but they sure can win the hearts and minds of people by putting a fear into them.
They have deadlines, and then those come and go, and then there's the next goal, the next goal. So a lot of times it doesn't mean that the deadline of August whatever means that's when it's going to happen. That means that that's the deadline for part one of the program. Then they'll just keep expanding it.
Keep pushing for
more.
Well,
I predict phase 2 will be identifying terrorists.
Exactly.
And they'll give you, oh, they've told you that?
Exactly right, because they're looking at, we're having a second part of the training in June, and that's where we deal with crowd control kind of issues. That's my term. Their term is unruly people who won't follow directions. With crowd control, and that's where they're going to talk about suspected bioterrorism.
British government released foot and mouth. That's admitted, back of the paper, but it's admitted. So
sure, and that's something that they were really hot on was foot and mouth disease, and saying that breaks out here. He said you're going to see a quarantine like nobody's seen a quarantine.
Well, they use that to get states to pass martial law provisions. Then it's SARS, then it's smallpox, then it's bird flu. It's always some new crises until they really do it.
Right, and he has referred to the trainer has referred to the fact that things are already that laws are already in effect now. That it would just take a call from the local FEMA director, the DMA director, to get things started.
That's page 76 of Homeland Security. Serving evil is always very destructive, especially to those that are active in it. What some of the other pastors you talk to, are some of them waking up, or are they all just got the spirit of the devil in them? Are they deceived going along with this? But anything else you want to add?
Briefly, just some of the things that they tell pastors, and for pastors who are called to preach the Word of God, we're being told that in a time of crisis that we just can't use the Bible. And these pastors are just sucking this up, and they're telling us that if you're going to use the Bible, just set it down next to you. Don't really quote from it. This is not a time to bring Jesus into the situation.
Because they're getting you ready.
Yes.
They're getting you ready to be total federal employees, and these, at the top, these are demonic individuals, and they know that name would probably screw up what they're doing.
Absolutely right. And what frightens me is to see these people, these pastors, sit there and take this and take the training and nod their heads.
And so they're telling you, don't bring the Bible into it.
Yeah, and they're just having a good time with it. So that's one of the points I want to bring up. There's several things you'll get on the facts, which you're handling in the next 5 minutes, but it'll get there. Several comments I've written down from the instructors, several things they say on the training that pretty much speaks to that same issue. I've not taken the opportunity to go out and question pastors yet because I'm still getting information. I want to go to the meetings as long as I can before I tip my hand. It still is only May, but we're looking at June they're having a disaster drill in June here with all this stuff in place. So I want to see how that goes.
And these drills are meant, and they happen in every town, every city, to raise the hysteria level as real, because the subconscious mind sees these drills as real.
Yeah.
And I've been to them. They'll splatter fake blood on the children. At some of them, they have men with machine guns screaming, "I'm a homeschooler, I'm a Christian, I'm going to kill you." The children cry. Children as young as 8 years of age. This is Soviet brainwashing.
We have about 78 pastors here in the area. 44 responded favorably, 23 went through the training, and 19 raised their right hand. So that's where it is.
So we're looking at about 25%.
Right, and that's a large amount because these people represent churches that are, family-based, home-based churches. So it's there.
They're even going after the little preachers.
Yes, they are. They love little preachers.
Those are the flocks they fear the most. Judas goats. Do you agree these people are Judas goats?
Without a doubt.
I've read Romans 13. I've read the teachings on it. The entire Bible is about people standing up against evil, paying the price, speaking truth to power, and then they claim by warping a sentence out of context that we're supposed to submit to whatever government says. If that's the case, we should have submitted to Hitler. The Founding Fathers shouldn't have fought the British. Then John the Baptist shouldn't have gone before Herod. Paul shouldn't have been killed. None of the Christians would have been martyred when almost all of them were. The Romans would have loved them.
That's exactly right, and that's the argument that you have to use against them. Look, if that be the case, then all our history is dead wrong. Church history is dead wrong. But that's not what the passage is talking about. When I taught through this, I just showed our people just what the Word says. To be subject to the higher authorities, but you can't take it out of context. The proper rules of biblical interpretation it's 3 simple rules: context, context, context. Never forget that. And these people just rip it right out as if they have no place in Scripture. But you surrender under Caesar. What is Caesar's? Nothing more. And that's why we homeschool our kids. They don't belong to Caesar, so they don't have the authority. So
they were trying to set Paul up in those circumstances.
Yes, they were.
And the point is, he's saying, give them their junk, let them have their garbage, but give unto God what belongs to God, and that's the whole world. That's your children. That's your soul.
Exactly right, exactly right. And this is what people are being asked to do today, is give them their very essence, their very soul, and who they are. And they've already given it so many times, it just doesn't matter to some folks. It just looks like they want protection.
Thank you for what you're doing for my country and my family that lives here. This is very dark times, and God bless you, my friend.
Make no mistake, Satan is the New World Order. How can anyone battle and fight the government and still call themselves a Christian? Don't they understand that the powers in government are ordained by God? Romans 13 verse 1 tells us to be subject to the government authorities. For there is no authority that exists which is not appointed or ordained by God. By respecting and praying for our government and its leaders, which God himself ordained and put in office, even though it may be corrupt. We need to focus that we may be worthy to escape, not fight, but escape and be protected and be part of Revelations 12:13 through 16, the only guaranteed secession from the New World Order. Our task is not to overthrow the New World Order. Our task should be to overthrow our addictions, and weaknesses and sins and temptations.